and welcome to the Cali Knowledge Bar series, which is a space where each month I serve up a law tender, aka attorney, to teach the community about a topic that is applicable and impacts their everyday life and how they can protect themselves from certain risks and move forward with knowledge. So this month, we are covering the topic of Cannabis Law 101 with Jorge Luis Vasquez, who is a proud New Yorker born and raised in the LES. Jorge obtained his Bachelor of Arts and Master's from the University at Albany. In 2013, Jorge achieved his law degree from Seton Hall University School of Law. In 2017, Jorge achieved a Master's of Law in Trial Advocacy from James E. Beasley School of Law at Temple University. Jorge has an impressive career trajectory and he's just getting started. Prior to starting his own law firm in November 2021, Jorge was an attorney with the New York City Commission on Human Rights, associate counsel at Latino Justice ProDef, and eventually he went on to become a director of Power and Democracy Program at the Advancement Project, a national civil rights movement organization based in Washington, D.C. Jorge has led advocacy campaigns and litigation in major forums across the United States. He has been recognized on numerous occasions for his work as a national civil rights lawyer, policy influencer, and democracy expert. Jorge was on the front lines fighting for cannabis to become legal in New York State. He is the Jedi Master of Cannabis Law. In 2023, Jorge was recognized as a leading civil rights and plaintiff employment lawyer in America by Law Dragon. Notwithstanding his impressive career trajectory, Jorge's biggest accomplishment to date is being a dad to his son. Please welcome Jorge Luis Vasquez.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's funny that you started out with law tender. For those who don't know, in the cannabis industry, someone who works and serves cannabis is called a bud tender. So it's only appropriate and I think accidental that it was just, oh, we have a law tender here who's going to provide you with how to be a bud tender or how this industry works. So that was a perfect segue.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no.
you for telling me that.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I think this is an important topic. I think it's huge for individuals to figure out, well, what is this legal cannabis space? How did we get here? Where are we going? And how can I get involved? Right? I think people are always curious. What we're seeing is we're at the end of prohibition. And when I say the end of prohibition, we have something that for New York State is legal, although on the federal level, it's still considered a Schedule I drug, so it's illegal on the federal level.
Okay.
But in the state level, you can apply for a license. There are several licenses that you can apply for. Adult use retail dispensaries and micro licensing window just closed on December 18th, but there are new licenses that are coming up. So for example, there's a license for a consumption lounge. A consumption lounge is a fancy way of thinking like a cigar lounge, right? Like just like an old school hookah lounge for those who might have went to like a hookah lounge. Well, it's a place where individuals can consume legal and safely tested cannabis, right? Cannabis, just like any other substance, has a threat of fentanyl. And what we're seeing is that the markets that are not regulated have seen an increase in fentanyl products. So we want to make sure that people are able to engage, consume, and use products that have been tested, products that we know that are safe. And that's why it's important to buy from a legal dispensary. And the way you could tell if it's a legal dispensary, it's going to have a sticker in the front of the door, and that sticker is going to have a QR code.
Okay.
And that sticker is also going to let you know that it's approved by the Office of Cannabis Management. The Office of Cannabis Management in the state of New York is the office that oversees the sale and regulations of cannabis. But But as a general rule, if you see bright lights, if you could look inside of the store,
Mhm.
if you see like a cartoon sign outside, then it's safe to say that that's just not a legal store, right? New York has really strong protections to make sure that kids aren't being misinfluenced and can see a cartoon and think that this is something for them. So what New York State did in its regulations, for example, is you need to have blackout windows so you can't see inside. You can't have neon lights. When you think about it, right? Like kids see neon lights and you're just like, oh my God, wow, like this is kiddie, or you see a cartoon,
Right.
or you see a play on like the Flintstones or another cartoon, but it's a cannabis product. Well, New York doesn't allow that because New York is thinking about how do we make sure that our communities are safe, and our communities are safest when we take as much precaution as possible. And these are some of the precautions that the state has taken.
Thank you, Jorge, for schooling us.
Yeah, no, I think it's important.
Before, I want to table for a second what you were telling me about this new consumption or lounge
Yeah,
type of license.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna table this.
Okay.
But I want to go back a little bit. Earlier you mentioned that the application period for adult use cannabis closed on December 18th, 2023.
Yes.
Right? So what happens next? Like for everybody who got their application in, or for the different types of licenses, like what's the next step for them?
So the next step is going to be a review process.
Okay.
So the good thing about New York State, unlike other states, is that they only charge application fees to ensure that they have enough manpower to read through every application. So instead of charging astronomical fees, New York State said, we're going to essentially charge, for example, a regular person applying for a dispensary license would be charged $1,000. Someone who might be under what they call a C, which is social economic equity program, they are charged $500. Someone who was grown up in a community that has been desperately impacted by the war on drugs, which they considered communities, I guess same thing, right? Impacted by the war on drugs, they could also be charged. They were charged $500. So it was a sliding scale to make sure that individuals who have, I want to say, bear the burnt of prohibition, people who have suffered the most from prohibition, are able to participate in the market, right? What we see in other states is that other states are charging, upwards of tens of thousands of dollars for an application.
Wow.
And we know that if individuals are impacted by the war on drugs, think about if you have a job and you're, like many New Yorkers, living check to check, to be able to come up with that amount of money, $20,000, $100,000 for an application, without thinking about your legal fees, without talking about what business structure, without the consultants, without other things that, as you could imagine, cost money, right? It costs money to build out a dispensary. It costs money to build out any kind of store or shop, and to make sure that you have the security systems in place. We're fortunate to be here today filming and recording, but imagine if you needed 16 of those cameras up, 20 of those cameras up, what fees would be involved there? So it's certainly great that New York made an effort to make sure that those most impacted are able to at least apply for a license. So now that licensing applications for adult use are in, the next steps is going to be a review process. So the Office of Cannabis Management will review license applications. They will contact individuals if something is missing, if there's any kind of deficiency. If there's a deficiency, then there's going to be a cure period. Generally, you have about 20 days to cure a deficiency. It might be you thought you uploaded the front of your license, but you only uploaded the back of your license. It might be you said, hey, I have a lease. Maybe you forgot to upload a signature page or something that has the address. There's a million different things that might be considered deficient. But the great thing is that you have a period to correct that. So it's not, hey, I submitted this, I'm not sure if I did it right. You'll be able to have somebody reach out to you and tell you, hey, this is what we need.
So during the review process, do whoever submitted an application, do they get assigned like some sort of officer or a person that reviews it, or Is that kind of TBD at this juncture?
Yeah, so they don't get an officer. The Office of Cannabis Management is doing amazing work, but they're not a huge office. I believe they're at under 200 employees,
Okay.
and they were over 8,000 applications,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
So to assign to just one person
I
might
get you.
might be a bit difficult.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that is a completely transparent process,
Okay.
and everyone will be contacted if there's missing information or something needs to
Okay.
be updated.
How long does the application process take, or the review process take, I should say?
I would imagine that the review process would take, depending. So there were two categories of applicants. There were applicants who had a location, meaning someone who had a lease, had control over a location, maybe they owned the storefront. So that application closed in November. I imagine that the Office of Cannabis Management has been looking at those applications after they closed in November. And then the applications that were just submitted on December 18th, that they're going to look at those afterwards. In total, I would imagine it should take like a few months. I don't expect it to be days, weeks, not a 1 month process, especially because there's this cure process, right? And inevitably, I would imagine the majority of individuals might be missing a document. And if they're missing something, then they need to give them a chance to get that document. So it could be a labor peace agreement. One of the things that New York State did when they ended prohibition said you can't be anti-union. We want to make sure we're bringing labor. We want to make sure that we're bringing quality jobs.
Right.
And these jobs make the world of difference. I'll give you an example. In Buffalo, the average median income is about 26 to 27,000 a year. The average bud tender is making maybe 35, 40 grand a year, right? So you're talking about the ability now to purchase a home. To purchase a home, you generally need 4 times your income. So now individuals who are bud tenders in Buffalo, because of this labor peace agreement in part, are getting paid wages that exceed what the average person is getting paid, and will likely now qualify for home ownership at a time where home ownership is scarce and it's rare. Essentially, the end of this prohibition is providing an opportunity for the state to create its own boom, kind of like post-Great Depression, where we're seeing an economy flooding, where we're seeing more jobs being created. There was a report that came out in December that you would be surprised. So I'm going to ask you this question, even though it's on your show. There were about 27, less than 30 dispensaries, legal dispensaries open
In New York State?
in New York State.
Okay.
In less than a year, how much revenue do you think New York State sold? Like how much product do you think was sold? And if you had to guess a dollar amount. And this is only, less than 30 dispensaries.
Less than 30 just in a
And
year?
under a year, yeah, under a year.
Under a year. 5 million?
100 million.
Wow.
So when we're talking about these jobs, when we're talking about impact to the economy, you had a new industry with only, less than 30 open dispensaries throughout the entire state. And the entire state saw over $100 million in sales. And this is great because 40% of tax revenue goes to communities directly impacted, goes to education, goes to after school, goes to law enforcement. So a lot of the issues that we're seeing in different communities can be addressed through the tax revenue through cannabis sales.
Okay. And so now for the folks that were unable to get in their application by the December 18th, 2023 deadline, what can they do moving forward? Like, is it the end all be all? There's no longer going to be an application process, or there is? Because I think you mentioned earlier that there is
Sure.
other types
So
of
there
applications.
are a million different ways to be involved in the industry, and there are different licenses.
Okay.
So there's always an opportunity to get a different kind of license. Everyone doesn't necessarily need a retail license. Some people might like to host and say, you know what, I'd rather have a lounge, a consumption lounge, where I could sell the product. I could have individuals come in, relax, and provide an atmosphere where people can consume. cannabis in a legal fashion. And consumption lounges are important because think about a college campus. If you're on a college campus, you're prohibited from consuming cannabis, right? Because it's not regulated on the federal level, so it's against the law. So it would impact your financial aid. Potentially, it would get you kicked off of campus, and the campus certainly can't allow something that's federally legal or illegal federally
Right.
to move forward on their campus. The same thing if you live in public housing, right? If you live in public housing, then you're obligated to follow the federal law. So you wouldn't be able to consume cannabis at home, but you could go to a consumption lounge, right? And have the safety of knowing, hey, this product is a New York product. It's been tested in New York. We know there's not fentanyl. We know how it was grown. We actually could tell you who the grower was. New York has a great program where it tracks from seed to cell. So once it's planted, there's a tag. And then from cell, we know that tag went. And then even from who the consumer was, we could tell you who was the purchaser of this specific item.
So you'd essentially be able to kind of know what small farmer in New York State that you're supporting just based on the
Absolutely,
money. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so the consumption, you could be able to get a license for a consumption lounge. Is there any other type of license that somebody who wants to enter this space?
Yeah, there's going to
for?
be delivery licenses. As you could imagine, you're going to need individuals to deliver the product, right? The product goes from the farm, and then it needs to go to the farm. It needs to get processed. Who's delivering it from A to B? Then it needs to go from the processor to the consumer, right? To the store. So then you need that. Think of it, the supply chain, no different than like your groceries, right? You buy a head of lettuce from a supermarket, but it came from a farmer. That farmer probably had a produce delivery company dropping it off at the supermarket. The supermarket then sells it to the consumer. The consumer then takes it home. So it's going to be a similar type of supply chain.
So how could folks, again, after the deadline, how could folks now then prepare themselves to, position themselves as a good candidate for the next round of application process?
Sure. So they could certainly reach out to Vasquez Jr. LP. They can follow me on social media at JORGE V as in Victor ASQUEZNY and reach out to me and ask questions. We could guide them. We pride ourselves in providing from A to Z service. As you could imagine, it's a new industry. So with new industry, you have old problems, and old problems disguise themselves as individuals who may appear to know something, but may not know as much as you think they know. And pricing might be off. Our clients have the safety of that we're negotiating their contracts with them, right? So when they're dealing with general contractors who are building out the space, we have an idea of one, how much time it should take to build out the space. We know what the pricing is. We know what's a fair pricing. We know what's a real discount versus somebody saying, yeah, we're giving you a discount. We're not letting our clients fall for the Target, right? We saw what happened with Target on Black Friday, where Target was saying, hey, this is a Black Friday sale, and Target's Black Friday sale was the same sale they had prior to Black Friday.
Right.
No offense to Target, I shop there all the time, but my real point is that because we understand the A through Z's of the industry and what it takes to get you operational and what it takes to prepare you, we're able to provide you with the counsel that gives you a peace of mind.
Why is it important to hire counsel, to guide you through this process? If you're trying to enter the cannabis industry space, why is it important to hire, Vasquez Jr. to help you through this process?
The first thing is that any business in New York, if you want to have your day in court, you need an attorney. As a business owner, you cannot go there as a non-attorney and have your day in court. So for example, there was a case that was filed, a Fiore matter that we intervened in. Individuals who did not have an attorney couldn't have their day in court, right? You couldn't go and say, hey, judge, I want you to hear my story, because the law requires that in order to have your day in court as a business, you need to have an attorney. So what better way to start the relationship than having an attorney right away who can guide you and in a worst case scenario could represent you in court. Or if there's a discrepancy, maybe you ordered A product and B product comes in. Well, a letter from your attorney is going to do something more than a general letter.
Thank you. What are some challenges that folks who are either just entering the space or looking to enter the cannabis industry space, what are some challenges that they could be faced with?
There are many challenges. The first challenge, and I think it's hard for any individual, right? You're a business owner, I'm a business owner, and when we're talking about how much revenue we expected to see in the first year, right? People are thinking the way you are, like, oh, this isn't anything huge, right? Like maybe this place is making, X, but this is really a multi-billion-dollar industry. No other state consumes or sells more cannabis than New York State. We see that the numbers are there. Less than 30 shops, over $100 million. So this isn't a six-figure business. And when you're running a small business, specifically a 8, potentially a 9-figure business, there are going to be challenges. But the first thing is identifying that if you're looking to enter the space, what are the evaluations? How much is this dispensary worth? What are the projections? What does that mean for me for tax liability? What does that mean for me for unemployment insurance? What does that mean for me for workers' compensation? I mentioned that there's a labor peace agreement. Well, what happens when your employees become unionized? How do you have somebody reviewing your employment contracts? What's happening with employment relations? What happens when someone gets hurt outside of your business, if they get hurt outside of your business? So there are many different things that are important to consider, and everybody comes at a different level. Some individuals have ran restaurants, right? And you understand, what customer service is. Some people may have owned a liquor store, others may have owned a clothing store or some kind of, business, and they get some business aspect, but really getting not only individuals who are interested in the license, but stakeholders, our community involved, letting them know, like, hey, by this dispensary being in this community, we might be able to save these after-school programs that have been closing, right? And that's important when you're talking about $100 million and 40% of that tax revenue is going towards communities that have been directly impacted. Says a lot.
Do you really think it's going to help the communities that are predominantly disenfranchised in New York State?
It is, because there's been so much research that has been poured into what communities. So some of the things that have been done, for example, is people have used the FOIA system, Freedom of Information Act laws, to literally FOIA every cannabis arrest in New York State. And the way you track those are through what the charges were. So, penal law 220, 221, and then cross-referencing that with who are the people impacted, where do they live at, where was their arrest at, what was their arrest for, what was the impact of that arrest. Well, we know a simple possession of cannabis arrest means that you're disqualified from financial aid, you're disqualified from certain federal loans. That's important to know because most home mortgages are federal loans. Right? So that means somebody, because of a simple possession of cannabis, may have gotten kicked out of school, unable to apply for financial aid, maybe even kicked out of public housing. And then on top of that, if they were able to quote unquote make it, were disqualified from a mortgage because they have a Schedule 1 charge, right? For those who may not know, cannabis is at the same schedule as crack cocaine.
Wow.
So when you have that kind of consequence that comes with this, there's data that supports why the monies need to go in certain aspects and certain places.
So taking a look ahead, 2024, how do you think this space, this industry will positively impact our state as a whole, and then our brown and black communities? How will it impact them? Look ahead.
So when we look throughout history, and we look at the civil rights movement, for example, and we look at if there is such thing as a post-civil rights movement. I don't agree that there is a post-civil rights movement, but from a historical context, what we saw uh, once the quote-unquote civil rights movement was over, we saw that unions and union employment were the way for Black and Brown communities to move up class-wise. We saw that home ownerships went up. And what we know as a whole is that when there's more union jobs, when unions are thriving, everyone is thriving. We're talking about an emerging market that everyone who's operating in it has signed a labor peace agreement. Your average dispensary is probably going to have somewhere between 15 to 20 employees. So just in thinking about 30 legal dispensaries, 30 times 20, right? That's how many potential union jobs you have. We could easily see maybe 500 dispensaries opened up by the end of 2024. You see 500 times 20, we're talking about a real opportunity for individuals, one, to be involved in a union, to have labor protection, to have living wages that are more than a minimum wage, and to really be proud about an industry that they're the first ones in. This is a chance to come in when no one else has more experience in.
How could smaller businesses, compete or just, put their hat in the ring compared to like a bigger company coming from outside of New York to, start business here in New York? Like how could it be on the same playing field, or how could they go about protecting themselves to be on the same playing field?
So certainly, having competent counsel, having someone like myself, yeah, you can't go wrong. But the thing to remember is that New Yorkers know New York is the best.
I 100% agree.
And that's going to be any New Yorker's secret sauce, right? You're going to have individuals who come in from other states who are going to be successful in their own right. But if you're a small business owner in New York, if you're a New Yorker, you know how to speak to New Yorkers. You know how to get New Yorkers to come to your business. You know that New Yorkers support those who support their communities. Many of these small businesses are the ones who are sponsoring our kids, athletics programs, sponsoring different activities. They're the ones who are giving away things for the holidays. They're the ones who are helping our communities. More importantly, they're the ones who are employing our communities. They're the ones who could tell you, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. Is that person okay? Or they're the ones that say, hey, I just, for example, I go to the corner store, they're going to tell me, hey, I just saw your mother. She just went here, right? They're going to know if somebody's okay or not. And that has value. And the thing is that we need small businesses to remember the value that they have and to really have faith and believe. In order to have faith and believe, you also need to try to be involved in the industry.
Is there any upcoming events that either Vasquez Jr is hosting or through OCM, where folks can go to kind of learn more?
Absolutely.
Of course, through the Cali Knowledge Bar series, but in addition to the Cali Knowledge Bar series, is there any other location where they can go to get some more information?
Yeah, so following VSLLP Law on social media, we'll repost different events. Certainly if you're, our client, we're going to let you know what events to attend. We're going to let you know what value added for certain things. And many of our clients are active in other organizations, and we keep it as a community. So that way we're letting individuals know, hey, this is what's going on in Long Island. This is what's going on in Erie County. This is what's going on in the Capital Region. This is what's going on in the Mid-Hudson. This is what's going on in New York City, right? Because every place is unique and has its specialties.
Of course. Jorge, thank you.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.